Hello, you saucy little sauce pots, and welcome to the YouTube. You guys wanted to see some longer format content. When I say you guys, I mean my mum. And I'm a complete people pleaser, so here we are. I don't really know what the fuck I'm gonna do with this channel. So what you guys want to see, honestly, just slide into my DMs on Instagram, slide into my DMs in YouTube. I don't know if YouTube has DMs, I think it's comments. We will figure it out together. So I fucking yeeted that under there. So I'm gonna go through a little bit more about who the fuck I am, where the fuck I am, and what the fuck I'm doing. That is not a lot of milk. Complimentary milk at this place was about one squeeze of a tit, but we're gonna work with it. We'll add some water. Intelligent. And I've already got started, as you can see, with the clickbaity titles of saying my diet starts Monday. Because yeah, well, my diet does actually start Monday. And over the next 12 weeks, oh fuck me, how do I open this? I'm gonna be running through a calorie deficit to drop a little bit of body fat. I'm gonna start off with documenting how I'm gonna go about setting up my calorie deficit so it's not a fucking miserable experience for myself. And then I'll document my progress along the way. Now, one thing I'm going to be doing as I look to put myself in a calorie deficit is tracking calories. And this is something that I don't actually do that much. When I first got into understanding nutrition a bit more, I tracked calories fucking religiously for months, probably close to a year or more. And to be honest, from that experience, I learned a heck of a lot about my nutrition, what foods had protein in them, which foods were a bit more calorie friendly, which foods weren't, what kind of balance I could strike over the course of the week so I could have some of the fun stuff, but not too much of the fun stuff. And honestly, it was quite an enlightening experience. However, I definitely did get to the point where I became an absolute anal Nelly, and it was just freaking tiring. And as I've gone through my years and gained wisdom or life experience or something along those lines, tracking has become less and less appealing. So what I tend to do when I'm going through a bulk or adding mass or just living my best life, I don't really track calories. I have an awareness of it. My meal structure is pretty damn consistent whether I'm tracking or not tracking, but it's just one part of my brain that I want freed up for other shit. However, I do use tracking when I want to be a bit more efficient with my calories, aka with a deficit. I don't really want to be in a deficit for that long. So tracking calories makes it so that I'm going to take a bit more guesswork out of it. I'll be a little bit more efficient. And so for me, over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to say the juice is going to be worth the squeeze to be tracking calories once again. So to set up my calories, I have gone on, I don't know if you can see that, props not, a Harris Benedict calculator. That's the one that I tend to use. There's lots of different calculators and all of them will spout out a slightly different result. But to be honest, none of these are going to be massively accurate. It's an educated guess, but it isn't inside your body and knowing every single fucking thing that's going on. And so there's always going to be a large degree of inaccuracy with that starting number. Now, with that, you can be like, well, what's the fucking point of using that? Why am I using that? Is that just like, it's just stupid to do that? Well, it can give you a good starting point. And so for me, it's given me an estimated total energy expenditure based on my current activity levels and physiological details. And to start off, I'm going to use that number as a start point, and I'm going to put myself in a pretty moderate calorie deficit. I'm actually going to chuck myself into around a 30% deficit and see what happens from there. So I'm just coming to the editing part of this process, and I wanted to add in a small little caveat here because I mentioned there that I am putting myself into around a 30% deficit, which certainly is more onto the moderate / aggressive side of doing things. And that doesn't mean that you have to do a 30% deficit. So if you are finding your calorie maintenance, you're going, what size deficit should I go on? Oh, she's done 30%, I'm going to do 30%. It's not something that you necessarily need to do. And the thing that we're looking for when we're trying to set our deficit is really trying to find the G-spot with it. Now, the G-spot with it is always going to be the point where your calories are low enough below your maintenance that you're creating a big enough deficit that is motivating you with the results that you're getting. You don't want to put yourself in such a small deficit that you see fuck all difference week to week because you're going to be like, what's the point of doing this? Why am I hungry and I'm not really seeing the results that I want to? This is minging. I don't really want to be doing that. So that's not really a sexy place to be. And it's not really a sexy place to be going to a place that is so damn aggressive that you can't even stick to what you're trying to stick to. So every weekend you find yourself balls deep in Haagen-Dazs thinking, why the fuck am I doing this? What is wrong with me? You want to find that middle spot where it's low enough that you can see the results that you want to, but not so low that you can't stick to it. So you're trying to find that place that's in the middle ground. And I'll say for most people, that's between 10 and 30%. But don't be afraid to have a little bit of trial and error with this, like I'm about to mention in the rest of the video. Because this is the thing about when you have these starting numbers and then you start tracking your intake, is that when you're a consistent little fuck nugget, and then you track your progress through measurements, scale weight, progress picture, you can then tweak things off the back of that. For example, if I am starting to track 16 to 1700 calories and I don't lose any fucking fat, then it's probably a case of that my estimation spat out something a little bit too high. And so I might need to either reduce my calorie intake, fucking hope not, or further increase my expenditure by increasing my step target or adding in a little bit of cardio. Or if I see that I'm really pissing hungry and the weight is just flying off and I'm like, shit, yeah, I can't sustain this for 12 weeks. Holy mother of God. And then maybe the initial calculations were a little bit low and you can increase that food. Don't get tied in the calculations. Use it as a guide and then see where your results fall after that. And if you didn't know that putting ice in a protein shake takes the taste from a 4 out of 10 to a solid 6 out of 10. And you're fucking welcome. As for the next tick boxes that I'm going to be going through for my fat loss journey, I'm going to make sure that I'm hitting a protein goal. And with that, I'm going to be aiming for 1.6 to 1.8 grams per kg every single day. And so for me, that's going to be in and around 120 grams per day. That's actually quite nice. No, it's not, actually. The aftertaste has caught up. That is a really bad investment. Really bad. I want to set that protein to that level to help me maintain as much muscle as possible as I go through this deficit, as well as stop me from becoming a complete hangry goblin, because protein is one of the more saturating foods that you can consume. So I've written here a shopping list of shit that I'm going to eat this week. Let's fucking go. All right. We have a shopping haul. Now, as much as I don't really want you to look at what I've eaten here and then think you need to eat exactly the same, I do want to take you through what I've bought and why I bought it. So with all these food options that I'm going to take you through, there are some common things that I'm looking to achieve with each meal. So I'm going to take you through that and you can take inspiration as you may from the things I'm going to go through. So for breakfast, I am going to be doing an overnight protein oats recipe. I tend to go for is around 40 to 50 grams of oats, 40 to 50 ml of milk, so matching the amount of oats with the amount of milk. Put in a scoop of whey protein so it goes all nice and pasty, and then that turns it into like a little cake texture. Then I put on some mixed berries, leave it overnight, and then put some PB on in the morning, and it's fucking banging. Now for lunch, we're going to be going for some fresh rolls with some pre-cooked chicken and a fuck ton of salad to go inside and probably a little bit outside, and a little bit of soy sauce to give it a little bit of heaven. For dinner, we've got a couple of recipes. One is going to be a curry and the other is going to be a chili con carne. And then here we have the snack haul. From here, you can probably tell I'm a little bit of a sweet tooth goblin. And so what I've gone for is some fruit, high protein, Greek yogurt, and always go for the flavored kind because plain Greek yogurt is like tasting a fucking foot. And then I have a few things that are a little bit more kind of like processed sweetness, goodness, heaven, just to kind of keep cravings and things at bay. I don't like going completely like, oh my God, I'm going to eat nothing but whole foods 100% with any of my diet. I know health gurus are going to go at me and be like, oh my God, Rachel, what are you doing that for? You're meant to be a health coach. You should have never even touched a chocolate bar. You should never touch any chemicals. Oh my God, your body's going to fucking implode. I've been in situations where I've done nothing but eat clean, and I can tell you now my life was fucking miserable as a result. Having food fear when going out, or having each day be an absolute bloody slog because there's literally no joy in the nutrition that I was having, it just ain't it for me. So I tend to go around 80% of my nutrition around single ingredient foods, minimally processed foods, and then the 10-20%. I tend to like to have a little bit more fun. And yes, I will be hammering my body with some artificial sweeteners, so you can expect me to have cancer by the end of this 12-week cut, because I think that's how it works. Pretty sure. But no, what you'll see with each of these main meals, the things that are making up the bulk of the calories that I'm consuming, is that they're prioritizing high protein, lean protein, as well as plant diversity. So I'm trying to have a lot of low calorie, high volume food. So having big fuck off salads on the side of my lunches. I'll probably have a bit of that with my dinner as well. I'm having things like pulses to bulk out my meals, so there's a bit more fiber coming in there. And each of my plates tend to look like they have about half of the plate coming from those low calorie, high volume foods. So these tends to be like your fruits, your veggies, those sort of things. Quarter of the plate coming from protein, aiming between 20 to 40 grams of protein per meal that I'm having. Then the other quarter of the plate coming from more of my starchy carbs. So things like my oats, my rolls, my rice. And often there'll be a little bit of fat coming in from things like peanut butter or some cooking oils, those sorts of things. Because as much as calories are really the most important thing for me to effectively drop body fat over the next 12 weeks, if I filled all of my calories with ice cream, I probably will be fucking hungry, and I rather feel energized and satiated as I go through the next few weeks. And so it's just about finding that balance that tickles your titties in all the right ways. But as I pop this away, I do want to go through just like a really common mistake I see people make when they are starting a diet or starting a deficit, starting a cut, whatever it is you want to call it. And a bit more around the diet starts Monday attitude. Because I see it really freaking common that because your diet's starting on Monday, the days before or the week before, you kind of just treat it as like a fucking free-for-all of like, give me all the food, put it in my mouth, I'm not even going to swallow, I'm deep throating the fuck out of this. Because you're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks of pure restriction. And things are going to be bloody miserable, and so I might as well enjoy myself now and I can sort it out later. Now, if you want to do that, you can crack on, but I am going to tell you why I think that's really fucking stupid. Look, I love you, but smashing in the calories like crack on a Saturday night is probably going to be starting you off on the wrong foot. You're going to be starting feeling bloated, lethargic, probably a bit guilty, probably thinking, oh my God, I need to go in more restrictive now because I really fucked it over this last week when I was eating more because I knew I was going to go on a deficit the next week. So I do strongly recommend that you try not to overeat like fuck just before you start your deficit. And when you go into your deficit, try not to make it purposely miserable. Pin foods that you enjoy, be a bit more moderated in your approach so that when you're thinking, oh my God, diet starts Monday, you're not thinking, oh my God, misery starts Monday. Of course there's going to be compromises, of course there's going to be things that you're going to have to say no to stick to your goals. It doesn't have to be fucking dreadful. And voila, we are in the great outdoors, and I'm going to use this time to lecture to you why you should be going into the great outdoors. No, I'm kidding. I'm not actually going to lecture anything to you, but I am just going to tell you what I'm doing to support my deficit through the use of increased movement. Because when we look at the principle of fat loss, we know it's coming down to calories in versus calories out. Now, I'm going to be taking care of the calories in portion via the nutrition, like I've spoken about in this video already. But for the calories out portion, there's a few things that we can do to maximize your expenditure in a way that doesn't suck. And the base, the foundation, the creme de la creme of increasing calorie expenditure via movement is just getting in your steps, aiming to move a certain amount each day or on average over time. It's just going to be like fucking erotic for your fat loss. Because when we're looking at our TDEE, so the amount of calories that we are expending each day, the largest amount of calories we expend come down to our BMR, so what we're burning at rest. When you're sleeping, these will be the calories that you're burning to keep your body alive. There's not really much that we can change short term about those calories that we're expending at rest. Sure, you can gain significant weight over time or lose significant weight over time, which may increase or decrease the amount of calories that you're spending at rest. But when you're looking at your daily processes, there's not really much you can do. Whereas when you look at the other areas that we're burning calories from, have our NEAT, our TEF, and our EEE. So our NEAT is our non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is the amount of calories that you are expending through any movement that isn't planned exercise. Something that I think is really cool about this is that you can actually kind of divide your NEAT into two subsections. You have your NEAT, which is more conscious. So these will be things like making sure you're taking the stairs rather than the lift, making sure you're parking further away from the office, going for daily walks, intentionally doing shit that makes you move more. And then there's also another part of your NEAT, which are more of those subconscious movements. So things like fidgeting, twitching, just stating when you talk. Now with these things, you don't really have much conscious choice of how much you do it. Some people are going to naturally do it more, some people are going to naturally do it less. Something that is likely to be seen is that as you reduce your calories and you put your body into a starved state, which is essentially what you're doing when you're going through fat loss, is that that subconscious part of your NEAT could potentially reduce as your energy depletes because your body's wanting to reserve energy. Now people will mistakenly put that as fucking starvation mode, eat more calories, yada yada yada. It's not anything that aggressive, but it is something to potentially be mindful of as you go through a deficit, your calorie expenditure may go down as your mass decreases, so your BMR decreases, and potentially your energy output decreases with reductions in NEAT, keeping an eye on steps and making sure that they're not going down, and if anything, you're keeping them maintained or increasing them through a cut, is something that can maintain a decent level of calorie expenditure, which could either help you eat more food and still be in a deficit, or make your deficit bigger so the fat loss is a bit quicker. Overall, it's a fucking win-win situation and a really, really helpful tool. And that's just not even including the glorious benefits you get from going outside more and seeing more of the world. But who am I to be a philosopher or one of those types of people. So personally at the moment, I'm sitting around 8,000 step average over the course of the week over the last few weeks. So I'm going to start by looking to increase this to around 10,000 steps per day on average. One thing I'll put in here as a caveat to help you stick to your steps, because I think so often when we go through these challenges or you look to change certain things, we can go at it with a little perfectionist mindset, which can be about as useful as a crisp packet condom if we're not careful with that. Because if I say to myself, I'm going to do 10,000 steps per day, and then one day I only get 6,000 because I just got busy doing other things, I could so easily sit on that and talk to myself like an absolute dickhead and convince myself that I cannot do this shit, which tends to lead to my motivation falling rapidly out of my arsehole and potentially doing further behaviors that aren't in line with my goal. Whereas if I use the strategy of zooming out and looking at weekly averages instead, that becomes something that is a little bit more manageable. Because what I'm going to be aiming towards is not 10,000 steps per day, but 10,000 steps per day on average over the course of the week. Then with the last thing that I'm going to be looking at that is going to be helping me in my fat loss goal is my training. So getting into the gym consistently between 3 to 4 times per week. With these sessions, they're going to be mainly focused on maintaining muscle mass and maintaining strength as I go through this deficit. So it's going to be a strong case of lifting heavy round circles over the next few weeks. And with these sessions, I will be posting them on my YouTube as well as probably on my Instagram stories. If you want to see detailed parts around my training whilst going through a calorie deficit, so that in 12 weeks time I'm going to look like a little jacked motherfucker, then you're going to want to do that like and subscribe thing, because I'm going to be sharing more stuff on that soon. Now looking at the next 12 weeks, it's very easy to look at this and go, fuck, that's fucking overwhelming, because in 12 weeks time I'm going to want to see some pretty cool changes. And so often this is where I see people actually fluff up a little, because that outcome can be overwhelming, especially if you potentially have like a longer term fat loss goal or some big ass scary goal. You can be looking at the horizon thinking, holy fucking shit, how am I ever going to get there? That's so far, the terrain between here and there is messy as hell. But this is exactly why we break it down into these processes of having systems that are going to get my nutrition in check. For me, that is tracking my calorie and protein intake and following a baseline meal structure, so I'm not just winging it to fuck. It's getting daily steps in, so my weekly average activity is pretty damn decent, and it's focusing on getting those 3 to 4 sessions in per week and being consistent as shit with that. Because when you cast your eyes on those processes rather than that big scary horizon you're stumbling your feet on trying to get over to there, the more consistent you're probably going to be, and the more joy you can probably take from the day-to-day process, so long as you're not doing anything stupidly restrictive and hateful. Like, it can be fun pushing yourself in the gym. It can be great going outside and getting some fresh air, listening to some banging music, banging podcasts when you're getting in your daily steps. And it can be fun knowing you're ticking boxes that is going to make you feel healthier and happier with your nutrition. When you focus on those pillars rather than the goals you're trying to get to, time will pass. And the more consistent you've been in those processes, the better the outcome's going to be. So if you have got that big fuck off scary goal looming on the horizon for you and you're like, Rachel, I don't really fucking know how to do this, break up the processes, make it so that they will challenge you, but you will get fulfillment from them, and be a relentless, consistent little bugger. And then I promise the magic will happen. Over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to be documenting this journey so that hopefully you can take some of those nuggets away and implement it to your own shit. Peace out, my little kidney beans. I've got the rest of my steps to do.